Hi everyone, I am Chef Manuel Bouillet and I am Chef Alexis Bouillet. Today we're gonna introduce you the Cointreau signature croissant. If you're ready, then let's get started. So now this is the first step for the croissant. Of course, the most important thing is the croissant dough base. So this is what we're gonna see now. Actually, in this container I have placed my two types of flour, which is T45 and T55, also placing the butter. So this is the first part I will pour into my mixing bowl. Also following, we have the water, but the water will be only added at the end of the process. And then we'll pour the sugar and also the liquid malt together. Yep. Then we'll have the sea salt. So we put it in one corner. And then we'll separate the yeast on the other corner. Then we finish with the milk powder. Over here in this recipe, the malt will actually help you to balance the fermentation, to improve this fermentation. This recipe has a low sugar content, so that's why the malt will help to interact with the yeast and then create a better fermentation. And then only at the end of the process, we are gonna add water, which is also cold at 3 degrees. And then the moment I pour the cold water onto my mix of flours, then we'll need to start the mixing process directly, otherwise you will get some lumps. Alright, let's get started. So after the mixing process, which is 6 minutes in first speed and 6 minutes in second speed, our dough is now ready. We can check of course the texture and also the temperature should be 24 degrees. So we just take the dough, and let's say the idea to check if your croissant dough is good, you just take part of it and you can check the window pan. So what is the window pan? It's like you stretch the dough and until you have a nice elastic and something a bit transparent. And by stretching the dough like this, you can see there is a certain resistance. That means that the gluten is correctly developed. So this is a good sign for our dough. And a good sign also for the baking process, proofing process and baking process after. Okay, so then the dough is fine, 24 degrees, and we're gonna just fold the dough to make sure we have a nice and slightly elastic, and also to form a nice shape. So about this process, actually quite important, and to make it as tight as possible, because this will really ensure like the final volume of your croissant. At this stage, then we want to let it rest about 15 to 20 minutes, and then the dough will start to relax, and we'll use like the plastic wrap on the side in order to spread it as a square shape, ready to go for tomorrow. So I just place in the middle of my plastic wrap just to make sure it doesn't get dry on the surface. So just like this, and leave it for about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll make a nice square. Okay, so after 20 minutes resting at room temperature for the croissant dough, it is now time to make a nice square. So you can see that we have already a bit of the fermentation already started. So I'm still using my plastic wrap, which is much more convenient for the process. And then just make a nice square. So if you do the process for 500 grams of butter, I recommend to you to make a square around 30 cm times 30 cm. We can see that the dough is nice and smooth. So which is a good sign for the result tomorrow. Do not hesitate to stretch gently the dough just to make sure you have some nice angle. If we have a nice square today, it will be much more convenient for the process tomorrow. So over here, what we want to do is to finalize our square. And then, as soon as our square will be done, we want to place it in the freezer or in the blast freezer. And the reason why is because the fermentation has already started. So then if we just place it in the refrigerator overnight, then the fermentation will keep going. So it's very important to cut strictly the fermentation and then place in the refrigerator, ideally at -2, -3 overnight. We are sure that the fermentation won't start overnight, and then tomorrow it will remain exactly the same. All right, so we have a nice square 30 × 30. So for this step of the croissant, the first part will be to prepare the butter. It is important to laminate through the dough chiller the butter in order to have the right size. So the size that we want at the end is something like 30 cm times 30 cm. So that will be very easy after to incorporate into our dough, and the texture of the butter will be just perfect. So what I do is like I just sprinkle a little bit of flour. I'm gonna pass through the dough chiller just to make slightly thinner and get the texture I want. Okay, so the idea is to have the butter with a nice flexibility. So if you do something like that, you see the butter doesn't break, so that means it's a good sign that the butter is at the right texture but also at the right temperature. We always recommend to put the butter around 15 degrees before to incorporate it to your dough. Now it is time to laminate the dough. We're gonna keep 30 and for this part, and then we make it for the length will be 2 times bigger. Because the fact to have a nice square at the beginning, it makes the process much easier, and then you can keep something like a nice rectangle at the end. Okay, so then we have a nice rectangle ready to put our soft butter in the middle. So now my dough is 2 times bigger than the size of the butter. As you can see, the flexibility of the butter is pretty nice and easy to incorporate inside. So I'm going to place my butter in the middle. Just press gently. And I'm going to cut on each side. You can use even a not really sharp knife or just a spatula to cut on the side. And then I'm going to flip it and put upside down. What I want in the end is to have 1 layer of dough, 1 layer of butter, and 1 layer of dough to finish it. Maximize the result by making some clean layers. That will really affect by the positive way or negative way the puff pastry. So now I have 1 layer of dough, 1 layer of butter, and 1 layer of dough. So now it is time to start the first turn, so which is the double turn. Double turn means that I'm gonna fold into 4 parts. So now I'm gonna make my first double turn. So for that I'm gonna make the width slightly larger for my dough. And turn it and make the length around 90 cm. For the quantity I do with 500 grams of butter will be okay. So okay, so you see my dough is thin and regular, around 90 cm. So now we proceed to the double turn. So I just put back on one side, take the second part here and join together. And then what I'm gonna do is to cut in the middle and also on the side, just to get something cleaner. and then turn it one more time. So this stage of the process, we have 4 layers of dough and butter. Then to finalize it, I will just cut on the side to make sure I keep my layers in good shape for the next time of the process. So this dough will be rest for around 45 minutes to 1 hour in the fridge at 3 degrees Celsius. Okay, so after the double fold, then we're gonna go to the single fold. Single fold means 3 layers together instead of 4. So as you can remember, Alexis has been laminating the dough that way. So then we fold it in 4. This time we're gonna give a quarter of a turn clockwise and then we laminate the other way. The reason why we want to do that is because we don't want to stretch the dough always the same way. Otherwise it will retract only one way. So by giving it a quarter of a turn, then it will retract more evenly. So let's get started. First I will make it just slightly wider. It will be easier because this time we won't spread it too long. Alright, so my dough now is long enough. We want to make sure that we do not have any excess of flour on the top. And then, if necessary, you can always readjust the dough on the side with the rolling pin if you see that it's not straight. Over here it's nice and straight, so I'll just keep it this way. Then, in order to do our single fold, we'll simply fold approximately 1/3, and then we will fold the other part over. Keep it always nice and straight. And make sure you fill up the corners with the dough. And at the end, you should have something nicely rectangular. So as you can see towards the end, we will have 3 layers. So now our folding process is done. This dough will be ready for the final lamination. However, it's quite soft right now. So we need to let it rest a couple hours in the refrigerator in order to make it slightly more firm. If you are in the rush, you can also place it in the freezer and then do the final lamination for the dough. So for the croissant, step number 3 will be to do the mandarin gelatin. So the gelatin has the capacity to be stable into the oven, so that means it doesn't melt. So to do so, we are going to place our mandarin puree. So then under 40 degrees, we're going to add our mix of gelatin and sugar. The most important is to really pour slowly sugar and gelatin powder and then combine well with the whisk. That will allow you to dissolve really well those two components. Now that we have all ingredients together, then we'll simply bring to a boil. And then on the side, we have prepared a frame and we'll simply pour this hot mixture over the steel pot and the frame. Then we'll simply let it set in the refrigerator. Okay, so now it's boiling. We can just stop. And then we pour directly over our frame the whole quantity. So we need to do it very quickly because the gelatin will start to set very quickly too. So we just make sure it's nice and flat. We can also shake a little bit the tray, and you will be very gently. Yeah, and will be nice and flat. So then I suggest that you keep it at room temperature just for a few minutes until it sets, and after you can put it into the fridge 3 degrees until we cut it. Alright, so now we are ready to go for our second step. Second step will be the marzipan. Marzipan will be actually the inside of our croissant, a combination with the mandarin gelatin. So first, to start this recipe, we're gonna use some 50% almond paste, meaning that we have 50% of almonds. Then the remaining will be sugar and water. Then over here, I slightly reheated the almond paste to make it slightly more soft, as you can see. I'm gonna use over here the KitchenAid bowl with the paddle attachment and start to combine it together with our orange. Then on the side, we'll start to scale our Cointreau. First thing, we want to paddle it and to make it slightly softer. Then progressively, we'll start to add our Cointreau. Over here, we have a very hard texture. So we need to paddle it in order to have a more smooth texture and then progressively dissolve with the Cointreau. So let's check now the texture of the almond paste. You can see that everything has been well combined and it's pretty smooth. So the goal now is gonna be to slightly roll it, and we're gonna apply the almond paste between two parchments. In that regard, it will be easy to spread and then easy to cut. So the idea at the end is to have 0.75 cm for the thickness, and then we just cut it to assembly with our mandarin gellan. Both will be the same size to get like a nice stick ready to roll into our croissant. So it is now time to finalize our insert. So we have made previously the marzipan Cointreau and also the gellan Cointreau. So the idea is to cut it at the same size. So on my side, I'm gonna cut the gellan, so which is 1.5 times 7.5 cm, and we'll do exactly the same for the almond paste. For the gellan, we just need to use a bicycle, and will be pretty easy to cut. On the other hand, over here, we are also cutting it, but make sure the marzipan is actually quite frozen when you cut it, because almond paste has a high ratio of sugar, then it won't freeze really easily. So, and it can be a little bit sticky. So, but when it's nice and cold, then we can handle it pretty well. Then the same we'll do over here 1.5 and then cut. And then the idea when we have prepared those two preparations, we just combine them and stick them together. And then at this moment you can put it back if you want for your production into the freezer. So easy to use, nice and frozen, and ready to roll into your croissant. Okay, so now we are finalizing them. The most important is to keep them frozen, like that you will be able to handle them quite well, and then we'll place them on the croissant later on and then roll together. Okay, so our dough is now ready. We have a nice thickness. I'm just gonna roll the dough over my rolling pin, and the dough is ready to cut. Okay, so now our dough is ready. The thickness is 3.75. We just relax a little bit the dough, and we will start to cut, to trim a little bit the side of the dough, just to get our final size. So what we want is to have the dough around 32 to 33. And then we're going to use a bicycle. So this is what we use to measure correctly. So the size of our croissant will be 9 cm. And for the height of our croissant will be around 32. So 9 times 32. Okay, so then on the side, we're gonna use the ruler and the cutter and to start to cut our triangles. So then we take our frozen insert, which is with the marzipan and also the mandarin gellan, and we just place at the beginning of our triangle. So now we are ready to go. We're gonna start to roll it, and then in front of us we have some non-stick sheet pans, and then we simply place the croissant on the sheet pans. When we roll the croissant, we slightly press the end of our croissant, and then we roll as straight as possible. The end of the croissant should be, of course, at the bottom. So this is our final step after baking the croissant to make the Cointreau glaze. So to make this step, we will need some icing sugar. Here we have some mandarin. And on my side, I will scale, of course, the Cointreau. So of course, we recommend you to sieve the icing sugar. And we'll add first the Cointreau, and then we'll adjust the texture with the mandarin puree. Also, because not all of the icing sugar has the same, let's say, composition. So that means that your mix will be more liquid or slightly thicker than ours today. So this is why we will adjust with the mandarin puree. The idea is to have something slightly liquid but not too liquid to cover nicely the top of the croissant. So you see now we have like a thick paste, thick sugar paste, so we can add, of course, much more in order to have something slightly softer. So you see we have something a bit liquid, so it will be perfect to coat over the croissant. Alright, so after finalizing the rolling process for the croissant, it is now time to put them in the proofer, so 27 for about 2 hours and 75% of humidity. So here it's been between 2 hours and 2 hours and a half, and we can see that our croissant has a very nice volume. You can also slightly and gently shake your sheet pan and you see that it's like slightly moving, right? So this is a good sign that our croissant is ready to bake. Now we're gonna start the baking process, 170 degrees Celsius for about like 18 to 20 minutes. And usually if you have a fan in your oven, you can do fan 3. Okay, so here it is, our last step for our croissant. You see we have some nice color for our croissant, nicely golden brown color. And you can see all of the layers of the puff pastry croissant. So now we're gonna just coat it with our glaze. So we'll apply generously the glaze on the top of our croissant. And it's quite important to do it when it's still slightly warm, at least the sugar outside will crystallize automatically. Then we'll simply decorate with mandarin and we'll zest over the top. Alright, so after this step we need to crystallize the croissant for about 15 to 30 minutes until it's completely dry on the surface, and then you can wrap it or eat it right away. So the inside we should have a very nice honeycomb. That's beautiful. Very crunchy. The glaze really enhances the flavor, right? Absolutely. We really hope you enjoy our modern croissant with Cointreau and mandarin, and then share with the family. We will be the best. Enjoy it!